I'd like to mention a few don'ts for the embouchure. And these are things you'll find quite common in beginning players. And I must admit, I'm afraid with incoming university students, very often I find several of these problems that need to be corrected. The first and most obvious one is an embouchure that's too much of a smile. And what happens when you do this, as you pull the corners back, the lips, of course, get thinner, which means that the pressure of this metal pushing against the teeth, or against the lips, doesn't have any resistance in the lips, and so you get the lips squashed between the mouthpiece and the teeth, and the endurance goes very, very quickly. And another thing that doesn't happen very well is the tone quality gets very thin and brittle, and the high range doesn't work too well. I'll try and show you an example of that, just playing a simple G major scale on the instrument. And you'll hear as I get higher, you'll hear it gets very thin, and maybe if I really exaggerate, maybe even the top G, which is a very simple note for a professional player, will almost cause great difficulty. So we'll see if I can pretend to be really bad here. Sometimes it's not hard to do, actually. If you notice, you can see the corners just really pull back, and certainly not a pleasant sound. The reverse of that would be too much pucker, and this you don't run into very often. As I mentioned before, it's this ring muscle that's the weakest, but there are certain occasions where that becomes too much engaged, and the result becomes very muffled. Let's see if I can show that. Again, not a desirable thing. If you get them both pulling the right way, it should sound pretty good. And with any luck, my corners didn't move. You can be the judge of that looking at it. I think that was true. Another thing that's a very bad characteristic to see in brass players is a bunched chin. If you remember when I drew the set of muscles, I mentioned that there's a flat sheet here that goes down between the lower lip and the chin. Well, you want that at all times to be very firm, and you don't want to have too much of a U in there. I mean, you want to have a U in there. You don't want to have it covered up. I have a little bit of trouble not doing it right because my face is built that way, but I'll try and show you a little bit what happens if you bunch this muscle up here. Well, I can't do it. I have a couple students I should bring in here to do it. But if you see that, you'll recognize it very quickly. The chin sort of quivers up and this nice valley disappears. So that, again, is something that you want to avoid. This very often happens as people try and play higher. They'll not engage that muscle, which is at least a third of the strength you need against that lower lip. In fact, that's the only muscle that comes into the lower lip. The upper lip has all sorts of things up from the eyes and coming in here, but this lower lip has only that sheet. So avoid the bunching there. The next thing you want to be very careful of is mouthpiece placement. I mentioned that already. I've run into a lot of horn players that have their mouthpiece too low, and as a result, the high range really suffers. Let's see if I can try and show you that. This is, I think, lower than normal. See, I really have to struggle. So you definitely need to watch out for that. And also the other extreme of too high is not something you want to see either. You don't run into that nearly as much. Another thing that's very, very common in brass playing is the puff cheek, that sort of business, the goldfish. And obviously what happens if you're puffing your cheeks, that whole set of muscles that holds the air from pushing it out are not engaged. So you get no strength against the corners there, and again you'll get pretty much horrendous sounds. I don't think I need to show that to you. It's pretty obvious when you see it. And the last thing is excessive pressure. And the old strong left hand for the high notes is something really hard to fight. But it can be done, and if from the very beginning with the students, if you try and keep them from using that strength to get higher, but rather have the strength here. That will be of great advantage. So there are those things, the too much smile, too much pucker, too much pressure, wrong placement, bunched chin, and puffed cheeks. Those are things that you can readily see and from the very beginning try and put a stop to.